Well, welcome everybody to Facebook and welcome to Radio Murchie. This is Steve Rao, your host, City Council member, former Mayor Pro Tem of Morrisville. I'm also a board member of the New American Economy. And so we started these new programs called Fireside Chats. I'm giving you a virtual greeting from Morrisville, which is the 10th most livable city in America to live in, soon to be #1. And I'm here virtually with Jeremy Robbins, the CEO of New American Economy, which is a bipartisan coalition of mayors and business leaders that focus on immigration reform. So Jeremy, welcome to the show. Anu Pananganti, who works at SAS Software, and we're here to hear her story today of how H4 visa restrictions are affecting her life and her daughter, and we want to start with her. And Deb Ross, who is hopefully going to be joining the United States Congress this year, representing the 2nd Congressional District. She's a longtime friend of mine. And we want to get her perspective as she goes into the Congress on immigration. So Deb, thank you for being with us. It's about 45 minutes. The first 12 minutes will be on radio if you're listening, and then we'll go right into the town hall, which will be continue to be streamed on Facebook. So we want to welcome everyone to the show. And if you have a question on the webinar, you just type it into chat and we'll take it from there. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about immigration. Today I'm wearing my my moonshot shirt from a technology conference, and one of my late father-in-law, he came to America many years ago in the 1970s because he was so inspired when he saw Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. I remember him telling me that at dinner back in the late 90s, and he knew he wanted to come to a country where he could take his moonshot. And so that's really what immigration is about. And we want to sort of talk about that. And so before I go into have everyone introduce themselves, I think we'll do that when each person talks. We're going to start the evening by hearing Anu Pananganti's story about her daughter and what prompted her calling me. And we're currently working on trying to address her situation. So I think it's important for Deborah to hear this along with Jeremy. And then we're going to get in Jeremy's perspective on the economy and North Carolina as immigration impacts the state and where we think it could swing the election. And then Deb, we want to hear from you in terms of your perspective as someone who's been a legislator, someone who's been a lawyer on these issues, and someone who's going to be going to the United States Congress, and also someone who's got a reputation of working across the aisle. And we're going to talk about that. So does that sound good to everybody? It's a little more of an informal fireside chat tonight.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Anu, why don't we start with you and tell us your story, where you came from, how long you've been in America, and the specific problem you emailed me about regarding your daughter and the H4 visa.
Absolutely. So I'm a single mother, and I moved to US in 2005 for my graduate school when my daughter was 5 years old. So we came here basically to figure out my career and for a future for my daughter. So I was in grad school for 5 years. I pursued 2 masters while taking care of my daughter. And in 2010, I joined the workforce. I worked in Tennessee for 3.5 years. Then we moved here to North Carolina in 2013, mid of 2013. Since then, and that is to when I changed my job and joined SAS, and my daughter came here and she started her middle school in Davis Drive Middle School here. So since then we have been living here. So she went to Green Hope High School and fortunately got into NC State Engineering School, and she's a sophomore right now. Interested in computer science major. And from a visa perspective, I have been on, initially came on a student visa. Now I'm on H1B visa. And when I joined SAS, my green card process was filed by my employer, SAS Institute, and that was filed in 2015. So I'm in the process of pursuing the perm process and getting my green card. But as many people know, that's uncertain how many years it might take. So right now on my H1B, and my daughter is on a dependent visa, which is H4 visa. And my current situation is her H4 is expiring next month. And through my employer, we applied for extension in August. And because of current USCIS delays, it's projected it might take anywhere from 8 months to a year to get her H4 approval. As many know, what that means is legally she can stay here. She can stay here, she can get her license. But from a university perspective, unless she has her H4 approval, she will not qualify for in-state. So, which means starting spring next year, she will become considered as out of state. What that means is, as many know, in state, we pay $9,000, around 9,000, just considering tuition per year. When we become out of state, that skyrockets to 30,000 or more per year. And that's money that, financial stress that it's very hard on me, because it's just, no, I don't have any other financial support other than my paycheck. So that's what I planned for, but I didn't expect this delay and that she will become out of state starting spring. So that's when I reached out to Steve to see if there is any help I could get to expedite and potentially be considered in state next year.
Yes, and so that's a great segue. So, and we're gonna talk a little bit about her perspective of other countries, but I want to get your initial thoughts, both Deb and Jeremy, both from your perspective on the new American economy, and Deborah as a soon-to-be new member of Congress. What are your thoughts about what you just heard? Because my thought was that, first of all, she's paying the taxes of our state in North Carolina. Her child is going to a top university in our state, NC State, and she's having to pay double the tuition because of delays. It just, number one, doesn't seem fair, but I just feel like it's just doesn't make sense, right? What's going on here? So, what is your perspective, Deb? You're on mute. Hold on. Tell her she's.
Sorry about that. Trying to be courteous with the mute button. I can tell you that North Carolina went through a very difficult and sad debate on this issue more than a decade ago. So there had been attempts to have a kind of DREAM Act in North Carolina, separate from whatever would happen at the federal government level. And it's interesting because when it was first introduced, I was in the state house and it was a bipartisan bill. So there were 2 Republicans who were on it and 2 Democrats. One of the Republicans had adopted kids from other countries. And it became, after 2010 in particular, this hot button issue over immigration that falsely claimed that people like Anu's daughter would be taking the place of somebody else. And so rather than showing that people who had been here, paid their taxes, were here legally, could enjoy the benefits of everybody who was here legally. And so this has become a very, very polarized issue. If the Congress had fully dealt with it, we would not be in this position. And frankly, the Congress should, because it affects people in every single one of our states. And if the North Carolina legislature had adequately dealt with it, we would have been able to deal with this at a state level. And then finally, if the Trump administration wasn't so hostile to immigrants and to granting these extensions and to making sure that people can get their green cards, we wouldn't be in that situation. So I consider it a failure of government driven by partisanship and divisiveness. But I want to remind the people who are listening that the bill that was introduced in the North Carolina House when I was there more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, originally was a bipartisan bill because people recognized that people who had been here and worked hard and paid their taxes and had smart kids were assets to this state.
That's a great answer. And that's a great segue to Jeremy. After about 12 minutes, we're going to stop the radio and it's going to be rebroadcast on Sunday. and then we're going to come back to Anu. But Jeremy, so talk to us about the economic. One thing we love about New American Economy is the economic statistics. So, Deb made up some great points. The State General Assembly in North Carolina, like Virginia already did, I think. In Virginia, I think this problem couldn't occur. So, to play devil's advocate, President Trump and Stephen Miller and many people in the White House say exactly that. By doing this, by having these restrictions, we're saving American jobs. Where does the data and the statisticians refute that assumption for those listening tonight about how these skilled immigrants are adding value to our economy, especially during a pandemic when we need tax dollars coming in, we need revenue, we're bleeding right now, largest economic meltdown in the US, but also around the world, right?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And I think Deb hit it exactly right. Like, this is something where we have messed up at every step of the way. There are so many different places that we could have fixed this. It could have been through state DREAM Acts. It could have been through giving people status. It could have been through, and I know I don't know your current situation. All I can say is, and I'm sorry to hear that, but it could have been through fixing the incredible backlogs that people from many countries face, who can come here in 2005, work in technology jobs, contribute to our economy, and face delays where now, if you're a new person coming from India, your delay could be 100 years until you're going to get your green card unless we fix the backlog. So there's so many steps along the way. And I certainly hope that, Deb, when you get to Congress, that you join the Judiciary Committee and fix them, because we do need people who are dedicated and can do this. So Steve, just quickly to your question on the economy. The President Trump, in trying to deal with the COVID crisis, started pointing a lot of fingers. He kept pointing a lot of them at immigrants. And one of the things he did was on June 22nd, is he suspended visas, especially high-skilled visas, H1B visas, from a lot of countries. He sort of slowed them down. And so a study came out yesterday from the Brookings Institution and a scholar at Harvard and a scholar at the University of Pennsylvania, no slouches for institutions, that found that one day alone, that one decision to stop high-skilled immigration cost America $100 billion. So you think about why that happens. It happens because there's no cap on smart people that we want in this country. You think of Anu's daughter, who came here and is studying in engineering. There was an amazing story in the New York Times last week that 60% of the growth in college students over the last decade is from the children of immigrants. We want smart people to come. We want hardworking people to come, and we want their kids to succeed, because the story about immigration is not just about immigrants. It's about their kids too. And the story of America is immigrants, and especially their kids, coming, working hard, filling gaps, and making our economy grow.
Oh, that's a great answer. As we close out, before we're going to continue this town hall, I guess the question I ask Anu is, you mentioned in the conversation to me that your daughter's even thought about moving to Canada because it's a lot easier. So this is really concerning that Chuck Robbins, John Chambers' successor at Cisco, said that the recent restrictions on H1B could be called the Canadian Job Creation Act. And that really led into that argument. So what is the reasoning to go to Canada? It's just easier and more simple. So if you went to Canada, right?
Yeah, it is the green card process, right? Or the path to citizenship. I have been in the workforce since 10 years, and here I am still waiting, and I might retire before I get my green card. I joke about that. But my daughter, she'll turn 21 next year. That means she'll age out. So even if I get my green card, she's no longer qualified to tag along with my application anymore. So end of next year, she has to go on to student visa, and she has to pursue her own work visa and perm process, right? So she's signing up for something I'm already going through, and the long process. So when she got familiar with this whole, what does it mean, right? Why her situation is so different from her friends. She grew up here from pre-kindergarten, so she always compares with her friends, right? They got scholarships or could get student loans. All of those we don't qualify. So she already knows her situation is different, but she adapted. But to think about the future, what she's signing up for, that's scary for her. And she's like, okay, what are my alternatives? So we talked about Australia, Canada, not just Canada, right? Other countries where the path to citizenship is much more structured, I have to say, where there is point system. It goes based on your qualifications, the skill set you bring to the table, and it is more clear, I think, or more certain. I mean, it used to be that way here probably years ago, not since I moved here. So that is where her thought is, like, maybe she should think after her undergrad to move to a country where it's not, life is not uncertain for decades.
Well, and my last, well, that's a really, and we're going to have this continued conversation. So my last question to Deb, and we're going to continue with that in the live stream we have for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes, is what do you think you can do? Well, you built a career in the legislature in a decade of being a bipartisan problem solver, working across the aisle. How would you do that now going into a government that's so divided to make the case that we need to do this? I mean, why is it so hard to get this done?
Well, I think the reason why it's hard to get done a lot has to do with our current president, who is very, very resistant to it. It has been, the interesting thing is it has been done before. It just hasn't been successful. So in the US Senate, there was a bipartisan group of senators who had a comprehensive immigration reform bill more than 5 years ago. But they faced a very reactionary US House. Well, right now, we have a US House that could do it and do it in a bipartisan way, but we have a reactionary US Senate. And what I am hopeful of is that with the help of the listeners here and the viewers, that we get a US House and a US Senate that can work together in a bipartisan way. There are Republicans who believe in having comprehensive, fair immigration reform. There were 4, 5, 6 years ago. A couple of them are still there and are still very interested because they're from states that rely on immigration. Arizona, Florida, Texas. We should be able to put this together. I am hoping that we're going to have the leadership to do it. I am committed to working on it. I was committed to working on it back when I was in the State House and we were trying to pass our own DREAM Act. So I think we have an opportunity. And I think we have an opportunity because we see the talent of all these young people, and we also appreciate all the contributions, particularly in the research triangle area of our immigrant community, in science, technology, math, medicine, culture, everything. And it's from countries all over the world. And without that industry, innovation, smarts, grit, we wouldn't be the Research Triangle Park. And I think that this community appreciates it. I certainly appreciate it. And I am going to take those values, hopefully, to a changed Congress.
Oh, that's a great way. Well, we appreciate that. We want to thank Radio Murchie for covering the first 12 or 14 minutes of this. And this will be aired again on Sunday at 4 p.m. on 99.9 FM, HD4, 1490 AM, 101.9 FM. It's also aired in Baltimore, Philly, and Dallas, so you're going to get a national kind of audience, which is great. And we'll send everyone the video stream. So thank you for being with us. It's the Triangle region's largest Indian American or South Asian station. Now, we're going to continue. So Deb just gave a very articulate, passionate plea for how we can work together. Before we take it back to Anu, Jeremy, how do we reconcile, so the economics we get, the data is all on New American kind of website, 745 million in North Carolina would be pumped into our GDP if we accelerated the path to citizenship, 32% of our STEM graduates, 62% of our PhDs. I mean, the numbers are staggering and there's thousands of, like Anu, Indian Americans, probably 20,000 in the Triangle, probably I would say 30 or 40,000 in North Carolina, and probably 300,000 plus. And I've heard Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy say that, who she's going to be serving with, and he represents Chicago. Congressman Krishnamurthy has said that if you went to the path to citizenship today, coming from India would take 150 years to become a citizen. He said that in Raleigh a year ago when he was here. So with that being said, how do you reconcile the skilled immigration with the dreamers and the border issues? Because it seems to be that if you had piecemeal immigration reform, one bill, you could get it done. But when you get the skilled part done with some of the bills we've talked about, then you don't do the dreamers, you don't do the, what's the?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. I mean, politics is a messy thing. And it's funny how everyone likes to think, oh, if we just did my piece, and the show wouldn't do. Here's what I believe, having worked on this issue now for a decade. There are times when you can go for everything, where this is a moment where immigration is on the agenda and we should fight for it, and you don't want to leave anyone behind. We need to fix a system. It's broken in so many different ways. Like, we do need lots and lots of skilled immigrants, but we also need home health aides. We also need people working in agriculture. We also need people working in the fisheries in North Carolina. And so I think it's important to try everything. Having said that, there are times when you can't do everything. And so my belief has always been, let's show the sky won't fall down if we can get a piece. It's going to be really hard to pass a huge comprehensive immigration bill through the Senate in 2021, no matter who controls it. Even if the Democrats control it with 51, 52 votes, it's still going to be really hard for them to pass a big bill. That doesn't mean we shouldn't fight for it. I believe very strongly that the votes are there if we fight. But I think we should be thinking creatively. Right? There's an economic recovery bill that's going to happen. We're trying to recover our economy after COVID. And it's really expensive. We're thinking, wow, this costs this much and this costs that much. You know what doesn't cost any money? Giving the people who are on the front lines, keeping us safe, cleaning, caring for us, giving them a path to legal status, getting visas to get more doctors, more home health aides, getting entrepreneurs to visa. And so I think that we should be looking creatively for where can we attach bills? Where can we move things? Because I do think we sort of get in our own way sometimes with the politics. But that said, I do think, look, I think it's really easy to think, oh, well, my group is important and the other. And there are a lot of important groups. Immigration is a hugely complicated, but a hugely important thing for America. And we want to get it right.
And then we have 35,000 dreamers in North Carolina, which produce about 484 million to the economy. And many of these are young entrepreneurs. So I think the dreamers is important, and those are caught up in the courts now. So, well, we don't know whether the president will be reelected, but there were executive orders that were preventing, well, the Supreme Court upheld dreamers, right, Deb? And then they said he couldn't.
So what the Supreme Court effectively said was that the president can get rid of the DACA program that had presented dreamers. He can get rid of it, but he can't do it for a wrong reason. If he says he's doing it because it's illegal, but it's actually not illegal, then his reason doesn't. So what the president said is if he's reelected, he will try again to get rid of the protection. So it's so imperative that Congress. I'm sorry, Deb, I interrupted you.
Deb, well, Anu, what is your thought, before we go back to Deb, we have a few more minutes. We've got time tonight. I know it's been a long day for everybody. Anu, what is it specifically that would make your life easier right now? Number one, you said being able to get your visa processed on time, or your H4, so that you could qualify in time to pay state tuition, right? So that could save you money, right?
Yes.
Do you have other friends in your community that have similar situations you've encountered, restrictions with spouses being able to get back in the workforce, things like that, right? The H4.
Yeah, I mean, many stories, right? Different situations. I have family friends where the husband and wife are working in different cities, and because each has their own perm process with the given employer, they couldn't really move and start living in the same place. So that's also related, everything tied to immigration, right? They were scared if one of them gives up, then what happens to the other person's application. That is one situation. But with the recent restrictions on travel from India, some of the people went for summer vacation or just to visit family. And I have stories where the spouse or the kids got stuck in India because the consulate was closed. And, and they had to jump through hoops, and they were constantly, checking on the consulate if they'll give any emergency appointments and things like that. So I understand that is tied to the pandemic. That's not a regular thing, but a lot of restrictions like that. And for my own situation. I didn't see my mom for 4.5 years, and I'm worried to go because if I go next year, my daughter will probably in the transition to student visa, and I'm here. So we are already concerned if we go to India and go to the consulate, they might question, there is a chance she might get denied. So that means then what happens to her education? So basically, we are scared even to go home. So
Yeah, and this is what concerns me, both Deb and Jeremy, is that I get so busy sometimes in my own lane with Morrisville and other things I do around the state and region with technology. But there are literally the fear came across today in my phone call with her, which really bothered me. That Anu, you made some statement to me where you said, I have nightmares sometimes of my H1B visa being denied and being told to go back. And
yeah,
and I've had conversations with Congressman Price, who's told, and he and I both see over the last year and a half, I'm seeing more of these kinds of cases emerge. You know, I had one situation in Morrisville, which was covered on ABC News, where a gentleman was stuck in India. He went on vacation, and he wasn't able to get back in, and he did not. He was going to lose his job. So because of I've had one story where families, children who were born in India, had to actually, they got a letter in the mail that their visa they missed a deadline, and they had to go back to India for 6 months, and the kids were going to have to go back. So then they ended up having to keep the kids with a family member. So you're seeing families being separated too. So this all seems to be a very uneasy, uncertain situation in North Carolina. That's why I wanted to do this. We're the 9th largest state. We're a swing state. So Deb, how do these issues, do you think, affect this election? Do you think people are going to want to make a change in this country? I mean, there's 7% of our population is immigrants. 300,000 are Asian.
So this is what I think.
Yeah.
First of all, people who contribute to our economy, follow the rules, and want to stay here should be welcome here, period. And the rules should not consistently change. And I mean, I've got tears in my eyes listening to Anu's story, because it's hard enough during a pandemic, dealing with working and taking care of your children and making sure everybody's safe and healthy without having a government that makes your life and your job and your situation more difficult. And that is not what government should do. What government should do is help people, particularly people who are playing by the rules, who are doing things the right way. And it should be government's job to make it easier for Anu and her daughter to be able to get through a standard process. So that's the first thing that I would say. What this administration has done is tried to sow the seeds of chaos among the immigrant community so that people will just leave. And they've said that. They've said it over and over and over again. And frankly, that's un-American, and it's bad for America, because we are a nation that was built by immigrants. We are a nation that has welcomed immigrants, and we should be celebrating our diversity. And that is just the bottom line. And I think what is also happening is that we now are seeing that we're all in this together. There is definitely a section of angry people who, believe that other people cause their problems. But what I'm seeing is more and more, we're seeing that we need to work together. I'm seeing this in the business community. I'm seeing this in the churches. I'm seeing this in the schools. I'm seeing this just among regular folks who are understanding that we depend on each other. And that is what gives me hope. And I do believe that the reason why we're seeing so many people voting right now, and the reason why we're seeing more people speaking out, is because enough is enough is enough.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to come back to one more question with Jeremy, but that's a great, Deb, you're just giving such wonderful insight. I know maybe Deb, you're a lawyer too. This question just came in on the Facebook chat. Do you see any possibility to have EB2 filing dates current for October 2014? Does anyone know the answer to that question? Or are we gonna have to find an immigration lawyer?
We're gonna
Okay.
have to find an immigration lawyer.
Mr. Varshney, I will have my tech crew send me that question, and I will find an immigration attorney to answer that for you. Okay. So let's talk real quickly about research universities, Jeremy and Deb both. How does restrictions affect our research? Now, I've heard Chancellor Woodson talk about this, who's a good friend of mine, that there's a lot of international students that come into our universities. And in the middle of a pandemic, wouldn't you think this is a time where we want those immigrants coming into research on our vaccines? The late Mansukh Wani, who passed away this year, came from India in the 1960s here to Raleigh, and he invented Taxol. He died at 92. He was a chief emeritus scientist at RTI. So, that's an example of the innovation that many people. So, would this hurt our universities, our edge in America and North Carolina? These kinds of restrictions? Yes. It will.
We'll
Absolutely.
let Jeremy answer, and then I'll have
Please.
a follow-up.
Yeah.
No, go right ahead, go right ahead.
Yes, please, Deb.
Well, our universities and our business community, they've sued. They've sued the Trump administration over this very issue because they know that they will suffer, our economy will suffer, and our society will suffer if H1B visas are limited. They understand the contributions that are being made. And it's not just that immigrants are coming in and doing things by themselves. We live in an economy, in a society, in an educational area, particularly in the Research Triangle Park, where everybody is contributing. So this isn't an us versus them situation. This is a collaboration situation. In order to solve the world's greatest problems, we need to have the brightest folks with the most ingenuity and the most energy to do it. And frequently solving that problem comes from international teams that might involve somebody from the United States, might involve somebody from India, might involve somebody from Germany, might involve somebody from Japan. And if we can be the place that fosters that collaboration, we can reap the benefits from it. But that is just how things are happening now. It's the reality. And we need to be a welcoming place for that kind of collaboration.
I couldn't agree with that anymore. I mean, half of all early stage research in this country comes from our universities. That's where, we have pharmaceutical companies and all these other companies are doing research, but half of all of the early stage research in our country comes from universities. And like Deb said, it's not just one creative person. These are teams of people working on really complex issues. So one of the first studies we ever did was to try and understand the role that immigrants are having at these universities in driving innovation. And so we took the top 10 patent producing universities, the MITs, the Stanfords, the Caltechs, the Wisconsins, and Georgia Tech. And we went and we pulled every single patent that they had received in 2011. And we looked at who the people on the patent were. And do you know how many of the teams had at least one immigrant on them? 75%. 75% of all the patents that our top schools were getting had at least one immigrant on the team. So if you want to shut the door to that person, that's just cutting off your nose to spite your face. It is absolutely crazy in a world where our competitive advantage is going to be our ability to innovate, to be able to say, we want to turn away smart people who want to come here because we have the best research universities in the world. We should leverage that. We should use the magnet that they are to attract people. And it's really dangerous to turn them away because you know where they're going to go. They're going to go to our competitors and innovate there.
Yeah, we often forget, 44% of the Fortune 500 were founded by immigrants. But what's amazing is we wouldn't have a Zoom, we wouldn't have a Google, we wouldn't have a Yahoo, we wouldn't have many of the entrepreneurial companies that came here to start companies and create thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs. So I think that it's John Chambers, who I hosted a Fireside Chat, said that, India, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Modi's doing a lot of stuff in terms of helping startups and, entrepreneurs. Now they're being hit really hard by COVID, but assuming things get better, many other countries like Canada, Israel are making it easy. So what you're saying, Jeremy, is that people could leave America. They could say, I'm not going to go to America. I'm going to go somewhere else. And the next Google, the next SaaS, the next Cisco could be started.
Well, I mean,
Well, we just heard that from Anu.
yeah, I mean, Anu's
Yes.
story of her daughter is amazing. There was one anecdote in it, and it's terrifying, is a few years ago, Canada took out a billboard in Silicon Valley. And what the billboard said was, having trouble getting your H1B, come to Canada, you'll have residency within months, right? Notice they're not saying like, Canada, we have the greatest environment. It's like, we have good living, we have good schools, none of that. They're literally saying, we know it, the United States is making it hard for you to come, so come, we'll roll out the red carpet. And that should scare us.
Yeah, and Anu, we're going to end in a few minutes, but you're in the tech sector. So you came here and you got a job at one of the best software companies in the world. As somebody that's in technology, do you see there being a need for more of this skill, like in terms of just not having enough skill? So that, do you believe that we need more of these immigrants with the skills to fill these jobs? Because we often hear,
Absolutely.
you do
Absolutely.
believe that.
Yes.
Okay.
And it also
Okay.
brings the diversity factor, which is the diversity of thought, and that comes from culture, of course. But I'm seeing in the corporate, like, the diversity, that I manage a team, and it's a huge strength to have a diverse mindset and thought process and creative thinking.
And also the new jobs being created. So in artificial intelligence, robotics, data analytics, data science, and SaaS, a leader in that, you're going to see many new jobs being created that don't exist today. And in order to do that, you're going to need as much talent as you can. So that's my argument to the president, is that, this is what we need to do, right? In terms of just sort of, his argument is, well, close out the economy. That doesn't mean that you're going to create those jobs, right? I mean, of course, we want to be able to reward our graduates or universities, but I guess we can do both,
Yes.
right? We can have both.
Well,
Deb,
in a world economy, we have to do both. In order, if we want to be leaders, we have to do both. We have to be welcoming. We have to reward innovation. We have to listen to people who think differently than we do, because as we work together, that's where we come up with the ideas of the future and the things that will bring us forward. We know that this economy moves way too fast to try to shut things down and shut people out. When we do that, we become the losers. And this president never wants to be a loser.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In our final moments, I guess we've covered a lot of ground. I guess I'll let each of you just sort of give me your thoughts of, we'll start with Deb. So first of all, I got one question coming in saying, how can this community, there's many people like Anu who are in this situation, what can they do moving forward to continue to increase awareness of this issue to both Republicans and Democrats, so that if there's thousands of people in this state that are affected by this, shouldn't we make your colleagues in the Congress aware of that through a petition, through just, that North Carolina is a hotbed for this?
Well, I
Don't you
think it's very important. Petitions are one thing, but seeing Anu and hearing her story, I would love to hear her story, her daughter's story directly. And we are living in a time when people can do short videos. They can do a montage. They can do a 5-minute segment with faces of all of these young people with all of the wonderful things that they've done. And that sends that message. When you see that young person, when you hear about their dreams, when you hear about their accomplishments, it's a whole lot more effective than just their name on a piece of paper. And we're at a time when we can bring life and bring heart to this issue.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I think so. If you listen to Deb Ross, I mean, when she's elected to the Congress, we can reach out to her office, but share those stories. Maybe I am working on I've done a number of news pieces on this, but working with Jeremy to do some national press, do some local press, because press articles, news articles, they're a good way of telling the story, to different news stations. And this is a story that should be heard. The fact that a North Carolina citizen is paying, a resident is paying twice the amount of tuition just because her visa is in backlog, it just doesn't seem right. Jeremy, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's time for those of you who have the fortune that you can vote, you got to vote. Like, this is on the election. And for those who don't, you have a voice and you need to speak. And people are certainly at organizations like mine. We exist to help you tell your story through op-eds, through feature stories, through videos, through lobbying Congress. I mean, I'll end on an optimistic note, which is to say that though this is a really hard fight and this is a very polarizing issue in the national discourse, Americans have never been more in favor of immigration. Gallup asks a question every year. They ask, do immigrants help the economy or hurt the economy? And it has never in the history of Gallup polling polled so many Americans, 77%, who think immigration is a win. So I am very optimistic that, like Deb said, this is not a partisan issue. There are people on both sides who get this, who want to recognize that investing in immigration is an investment in America, and I believe we're going to win.
Anu, your final thoughts? You really made this a great session today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. The very fact that my story is even heard, that means a lot, because so far it's just accepting, right? Okay, it is what it is. That has been the motto for us. But I'm glad I reached out to you, and I'm glad, I'm being heard. Whether that makes any difference immediately or not, I don't know. I hope it does. But I'm thankful for the opportunity and hope it will change.
So the website to go to New American Economy, Jeremy, there's a lot of data out there. Anyone listening, just go to newamericaneconomy.org, right? And you can get all of our data, statistics. I'll be working with Jeremy on continued stuff as a board member on the ground here in North Carolina. Deb, we wish you luck in the election. And for all of you listening, she'll be, after November, updating everyone as she transitions into a congressional office, if she is victorious, of how to get in touch with her. So we wish you well in the election, but please, I'll communicate with everyone on how to get in touch with her, because we want you to tell your story to her, but also her colleagues in the Congress, and we can make that happen. We can make that happen. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. This has been a really informative discussion. I think hearing Anu's story has been magnificent. And on the heels of what I said earlier, I introduced Deb Ross in an event. I ended on the Alexander Hamilton theme, and people love that thing of in the Zoom where it happened. So I'm trying to, it's not in the room where it happened; it's in the Zoom where it happened. So hopefully we can get back to meeting in person, right? But I mean, really, I think that we want to thank all the immigrants who have come into this country and the state for everything that you're doing. And if you're listening to this feed around the state or the region, we need to show our collective strength in numbers through emails, through phone calls, through calling our legislators. So even after the election, when we transition, and if we have a new president, a new government, a new Senate, a new Congress, new legislature, let's figure out a way to come up with a plan and make it happen. Right. So thank you all. I've kept you long over your time. I know it's been a long day. Jeremy, we look forward to having you in North Carolina after the pandemic. Deb, I'll see you on the campaign trail. And it's going to be a busy night, busy week. 13 more days, right?
13 more days.
13 days. And Anu, thank you so much. It was wonderful meeting you through this forum, and all good things for you and your daughter. All good things.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for this great conversation. We have a lot of people. Nice to see Steve and talk through the issues. A lot of people have chimed on this. It's a very well-attended event. So I want to thank everyone for signing up. And we'll be doing another Fireside Chat on Friday with Senator Sam Searcy. We're going to be talking about political commentary. He's on the Biden team with me. And then we'll be talking a little bit on Monday with Mayor Dick Sears on bullying. So Thank you so much, and have a great night, everyone. We'll be back next week.
Take care.
Thank you.